Hi, I am the unpopular philosopher, and today we talk about the United States of America. America is at a crossroads. Faced with economic instability, cultural divides, climate crises, and eroding trust in institutions, many Americans are looking for leaders to save them. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris often dominate this narrative, positioned as opposing solutions for the country's future. But the hard truth is this: neither Trump nor Harris has what it takes to solve the deep, systemic issues plaguing America. Part 1. The Promises and Contradictions of Donald Trump. Donald Trump built his brand as a political outsider, a billionaire businessman who promised to disrupt Washington and make America great again. But a closer look at his record reveals a pattern of contradictions and failures to deliver on promises. Economic policies. Who truly benefited? Take the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, for instance. Trump touted it as a win for the middle class, but in reality, the majority of its benefits went to corporations and the wealthiest individuals. Middle-class families saw temporary, modest tax relief, while companies like Amazon and Netflix paid little to no federal taxes. Case study: Amazon. In 2018, Amazon made over $11 billion in profits but paid $0 in federal income taxes. Instead, it received a tax rebate of $129 million, thanks to loopholes and deductions reinforced by Trump's tax reforms. While Amazon thrived, small businesses and working Americans struggled with stagnant wages and rising costs of living. Social and institutional polarization. On the social front, Trump's rhetoric exacerbated divisions. From his comments during the Charlottesville protests in 2017 to his frequent use of inflammatory language on social media, he deepened the cultural and political rifts. His presidency saw a rise in political violence and a decline in trust in institutions, particularly the media and electoral systems. Undermining democracy. The 2020 election and its aftermath are a clear example. Trump's baseless claims of widespread voter fraud not only undermined faith in the electoral process but also culminated in the January 6 Capitol riot, an unprecedented attack on American democracy. Part 2. The Hopes and Ambiguities of Kamala Harris. On the other side of the spectrum, Kamala Harris is often portrayed as a beacon of progress, the first woman of color to hold the office of vice president. Yet her track record raises serious questions about her ability to bring about meaningful change. Her record as Attorney General. As Attorney General of California, Harris made decisions that often seemed to prioritize political pragmatism over justice. For instance, she opposed a 2011 Supreme Court ruling to reduce overcrowding in California prisons, arguing that releasing inmates would deplete the labor pool used for public projects. This decision perpetuated a system that disproportionately impacts Black and brown communities. Ambiguity on key issues. Even as vice president, Harris has struggled to define her leadership. On immigration, for example, she was tasked with addressing the root causes of migration from Central America. Yet her efforts have been largely symbolic, such as visiting Guatemala and offering vague assurances, without proposing or enacting substantive policy changes. The climate crisis example. While the Biden-Harris administration has announced ambitious climate goals, critics argue that their actions fall short. For example, continuing subsidies for fossil fuel companies contradicts the urgency of transitioning to renewable energy. Harris has rarely taken a leading role in pushing for more aggressive action, leaving progressives disappointed. Part 3. Historical Context and Systemic Failures. Trump and Harris are not anomalies in American politics. The system itself often elevates leaders who reflect its flaws rather than challenge them. Case study: Barack Obama. Barack Obama promised hope and change, yet much of his economic policy, particularly in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, prioritized Wall Street over Main Street. Programs like the Troubled Asset Relief Program (TARP) bailed out banks while leaving millions of homeowners to face foreclosure. Case study: George W. Bush. Similarly, George W. Bush's presidency, marked by the rallying cry of compassionate conservatism, led to costly wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which drained trillions from the economy and destabilized entire regions. These examples highlight a recurring pattern. American leaders often maintain the status quo under the guise of bold promises. Part 4. The Deeper Issues. The failures of Trump and Harris to address America's systemic problems stem from a political structure that prioritizes short-term gains and symbolic victories over substantive, long-term solutions. 1. Economic inequality. While corporations like Amazon and Walmart thrive, workers face stagnant wages and declining job security. Walmart, for instance, benefits from billions in government subsidies, as many of its employees rely on food stamps and Medicaid due to low wages. The pandemic exposed these disparities further. Billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk saw their wealth skyrocket, while essential workers faced health risks and financial precarity. 2. Political corruption. Both parties are deeply influenced by corporate donations. For example, fossil fuel companies continue to pour millions into lobbying efforts, ensuring that climate legislation remains weak or ineffective. Trump's administration rolled back environmental protections, while the Biden-Harris administration approved new oil drilling projects despite climate promises. 3. Cultural polarization. Leaders often exploit cultural divides for political gain. Trump's attacks on wokeness and Harris' cautious embrace of progressive ideals both reflect a broader trend, leveraging identity politics without addressing systemic inequities. Part 5. What America truly needs. The path forward requires a break from the reliance on savior figures like Trump or Harris. Instead, the focus must shift to systemic reforms and grassroots movements. Economic reform. Close tax loopholes and ensure corporations like Amazon and Walmart pay their fair share. Invest in infrastructure, education, and healthcare to create equitable opportunities for all Americans. Political accountability. Limit corporate donations and end the revolving door between politics and lobbying. Protect voting rights through legislation like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Grassroots movements. History shows that real change comes from the bottom up. From the civil rights movement to recent pushes for climate justice, it's the collective power of ordinary people that drives progress. Conclusion. Trump and Harris represent two sides of the same flawed system, a system that rewards rhetoric over action and perpetuates inequality and division. America doesn't need a savior, it needs a movement. Real change will come not from the White House but from the collective effort of its people, demanding accountability, equity, and justice. The question is, are we ready to stop waiting for heroes and start building a better future ourselves? Hi, I am the unpopular